Bad Boys for Life. I mean, Bad Boys Ride or Die. Man, they really screwed up with those titles. That's going to bother me forever. It sees Will Smith and Martin Lawrence return as Mike and Marcus, and this time around, they're trying to clear their old boss's name when he gets framed for being tied to the cartel, which ends up putting both Mike and Marcus on the run. So it's important kind of to preference this review by letting you guys know, not the biggest Bad Boys fan. Now, I don't mind the franchise. I like the first one well enough. Not a big fan of Bad Boys 2, which I know for Bad Boys fans is pretty much blasphemy, but it just wasn't. But, you know, Bad Boys for Life, I actually had a good time with that one. I enjoyed it back in 2020. The directors from that one are coming back to do Ride or Die. I thought, you know what? I liked that one. Maybe this will be decent. Now, this wasn't really on my radar. This wasn't one of my most anticipated movies of the summer or of the year. I kind of forgot about this movie until about 2 weeks ago when I remembered it was coming back out. All that to say that I kind of expected Bad Boys Ride or Die to come and go like a breeze in the wind. And to Bad Boys Ride or Die's credit, it's better than I thought it would be. Not to say it's great. Now, one of the most consistent things about this franchise is, of course, Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. Their chemistry is undeniably fantastic. And what's great about this franchise, and with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence within this franchise in particular, is yes, even though they're older, not to be ageist or anything, but it's a fact. They're older than they were in the early 2000s and 90s when the franchise began. They're still able to bring that youthful, chaotic energy to these characters and to this world and this franchise that just brings that high octane energy that you love to watch from the Bad Boys films. And it's really impressive to watch Will Smith and Martin Lawrence on screen not missing a beat. They slip right back into these roles effortlessly, and you really don't even feel their age on these characters. That's not to say that the movie ignores the fact that these guys have aged. And I like what this movie does is it takes these characters, it kind of takes their character traits and kind of flips them on his head, whereas Marcus has kind of always been the more worrisome, anxiety-filled one in the earlier films. They do something with Marcus in this film. They kind of give him a near-death experience to the point that throughout the entire movie, he feels like he can't die. He has this kind of invincible mentality to him that lets Martin Lawrence just off the leash, and he is just unhinged in this entire movie because he believes that whatever he does is not going to get him killed. On the flip side of that, Mike, who's always been the kind of cool, collected one, he has a family now, he is a father, and you see that affect him during these shootouts, during these action sequences. He actually starts to have like panic attacks. It's a very different dynamic between the two characters while still containing the same amount of chemistry, and I thought they did that really well. But aside from Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, the other thing you guys are coming to these Bad Boys films for is the action sequences. And I really like the action sequences in For Life. I do think that the action in some of the Michael Bay films gets a little bit too loud, a little bit too show-offy for me. And I do feel like Ride or Die did borrow some elements, or at least try to pay homage back to more Michael Bay action with this film. Not to say that the action is that bad. Actually, there's a lot of times in the movie where the action is actually pretty phenomenal. There is a couple sequences, though, where the action does stick out to me as being kind of poorly executed. There's one fight in a airplane, in particular a cargo ship, whatever you want to call it, where the camera was so shaky, the editing was so choppy, I couldn't really tell you what was going on in this fight sequence. But when the fight sequences are done really well, they're done really well. And what's funny about Bad Boys is that the best fight sequence in this entire movie doesn't belong to Will Smith, doesn't belong to Martin Lawrence, belongs to Dennis Green. You know, Reggie, who's kind of been under the radar for a lot of this franchise. They give him a moment to shine in this film. I'm not going to give it away because you just got to watch it for yourself, but it is not just one of the best action sequences I think in the entire franchise. It's one of the best action sequences, if not the best action sequence we've had all year long. Another thing that I really liked about this movie is it does feel like a very natural continuation from Bad Boys for Life. They don't forget that Will Smith has a son that we met in For Life. I know that was kind of controversial within the Bad Boys fandom. Well, he does come back in this movie, and the way that he's incorporated with our characters, kind of helping them trying to figure out what happened with their boss, also put it on the run with them. It's fun. It's a fun dynamic. It's a fun development, especially between Will Smith and his son, to see those characters grow and kind of get a relationship developing. I liked how they carried that over from For Life into Ride or Die. But at the same time, while there is fun to be had in Bad Boys Ride or Die, I do think the movie was a little bit of an unfocused mess. Now, if you're not even worrying about going into Bad Boys Ride or Die for the plot, you're going to be just fine. Because there's enough laughs in this. Martin Lawrence in particular is providing 90.9% of the laughs, I would say, just because he is just so over-the-top ridiculous playing with this premise that they have given his character, which at times Martin Lawrence really had me cracking up in the theater, and other times I just thought he went a little bit too far with the premise, trying to make the material work. It got kind of annoying, and he got kind of annoying. And I kind of felt that a lot with some of the humor in this movie. The movie has very hit or miss humor for me. There were times where I was chuckling quite a bit. There were times where I was just kind of dead silent when a joke was supposed to be playing. It also took me a really long time to get into this movie. I would say it wasn't until about 45 minutes into the film where I really started to click with it, because the movie doesn't really feel like it has a vision for the first, half an hour of the movie. It just kind of feels like they're doing a bunch of things to make the movie go along, but with not much rhyme or reason. And and the near-death experience that they do give to Martin Lawrence in this movie, that almost jumped the shark for me. It almost jumped the shark because it kind of goes into the supernatural, a supernatural element that the Bad Boys movies have never talked about before or gone into before. And like I said, some of the material in the script for the jokes just felt kind of weak to me. It felt like Will Smith and Martin Lawrence and even the entire cast were trying to do everything they could to work with this material, but it just wasn't really up to par with what they were performing. On top of that, I do think the movie has a little bit too many characters running around. I mean, I understand they're all characters that come with the Bad Boys franchise. They've kind of built this family of their own for this franchise. It just kind of felt the movie was a little bit overstuffed with characters for me, that it was hard to care about all of them. And the villains they're pretty cliche, and it's also pretty predictable when it comes to the villains. They're supposed to be like a bad guy reveal. I guessed it in the first 2 minutes of the movie, and sure enough, that's what happened. But like I said, you're not really going to Bad Boys Ride or Die. At least the majority of people aren't, for the plot, for the story. You're going for Will Smith and Martin Lawrence's chemistry. You're going for the action, and you're going for the humor. And for the most part, I would say Bad Boys Ride or Die did deliver on that. I think this is a pretty serviceable action film. I don't think this is one that I'm going to remember in the next month or so. I don't see myself rewatching Bad Boys Ride or Die very often either, but that goes with the whole franchise for me. Like I said, it's not really my thing, but walking out of the theater, while I still had some issues and some mixed feelings on Ride or Die, I can't deny that I enjoyed myself. I think it's a perfectly fine film, and I'm going to give Ride or Die a weak recommend. But if you're a Bad Boys fan, where it's like the Bad Boys films can do no wrong, it's a solid recommend. I don't see this disappointing you. And if you don't love the franchise, I don't really see this one turning that around for you. What did you guys think of Bad Boys Ride or Die? Have you had a chance to check it out yet? Comment down below. Let me know all your thoughts and opinions on that, guys. As always, thank you so much for hearing me out, and I hope to talk to you guys again real soon.